The first knock came at 7:13 p.m. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps against the wooden door. Yet inside Arave's heart clenched as if someone had struck a bell deep within him. The sound reverberated through the apartment, through his bookshelves. His coffee mug, the quiet air that had held his solitude like a secret. He froze. The knock came again. He didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. He already knew that rhythm, hesitant, uneven, almost apologetic. It was Mira. He had told her not to come tonight, said he was tired, that he needed space, but Mira never believed in space. She believed in presence and showing up, even when uninvited, especially. Then Arave stood still, breathing slow, as if debating with himself. His mind whispered, "Don't open it," but his hand was already on the handle when he finally pulled the door open. Mira stood there with her scarf half fallen from her shoulders, hair damp from the drizzle outside, and a look that was equal parts relief and defiance. "Hi," she said. He didn't smile. "You shouldn't have come." "I know," she said softly, stepping past him before he could object. The air in the apartment shifted instantly, like a still pond suddenly rippled by a stone. Mira moved around the living room like she belonged there, straightening a cushion, lighting the small lamp near the window. Arav hated how easily she slipped into his silence, how her presence rearranged everything without asking. "You live like a monk," she said, lightly running her fingers over a stack of Jung's books, Psychological Types, The Undiscovered Self. "Arav, sometimes I think you love your thoughts more than people." He turned away. "Thoughts don't lie," Mira smiled sadly. "People don't always either. Sometimes they just hide." He didn't reply. That was there. Sometimes they just hide. He didn't reply. Pattern. She reaching out, he withdrawing. Every visit began the same way, a knock, a conversation that felt like confession, and an ending that left them both a little emptier than before tonight. Though something was different. "Do you know," Arave said, after a long silence, "why I hate visitors?" Mira looked up. "It's not about them, it's what they bring with them. Every person carries a storm inside. When they enter my space, it follows the noise, the emotions, the expectations. It all enters. Too. That's not hate," Mira said quietly. "That's fear." He frowned. "Fear of what? Of being seen?" Arav almost laughed. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," she said. "You're afraid of what I remind you of, the part of you that used to need people, the part that still does." For a moment he couldn't speak. Mira's words had a way of cutting through his defenses like sunlight, leaking through curtains he thought were sealed. They sat facing each other, 2 worlds divided by an invisible wall. Arav's books stared silently from their shelves. The clock ticked with mechanical indifference outside. The rain fell harder. "Carl Jung said," Arav began slowly, "that the home in our dreams represents the self. The rooms are parts of our psyche, the attic our thoughts, the basement our fears, the door. The door is the boundary between who we are and what the world demands us to be." Mira leaned forward. "And when I knock, you break the boundary?" Or maybe she whispered, "I just remind you it's there." He looked at her, really looked. And in that moment something shifted. For years Mira had been his closest friend, his almost lover, the one person who never accepted the quiet walls he built. She would come uninvited, unafraid of his moods. She saw through his silence and called it loneliness, and he both hated and needed her for it. That contradiction was their secret war. Hours passed. They talked about books, about solitude, about how love feels heavier when you don't know how to receive it. At one point, Mira asked, "Do you ever wonder why we keep doing this? What this dance? You push, I stay, you hide, I search, you lock the door, I knock again." He didn't answer. Maybe she continued, "We're not fighting each other. Maybe we're fighting our own shadows." Arav looked up sharply. "You've been reading Jung too?" She smiled. "You think you're the only one who wants to understand what's broken inside." The rain softened. The room felt smaller, closer. Later, when Mira stood to leave, she hesitated near the door. "You know what your biggest mistake is, Arav? What you confuse solitude with safety, and you confuse intrusion with love." He shot back. They stared at each other, anger, tenderness, exhaustion, all blending into something unspeakable. Then she said, very quietly, "Maybe both can be true." Words hung between them, fragile as breath. When the door finally closed behind her, the silence returned, but it no longer felt peaceful. It felt heavy, alive, haunted by the echo of her presence. That night, Arav dreamed he was in a vast empty house. Each door he opened led to another version of himself, the boy who used to laugh easily, the man who lost someone he loved, the hermit who turned that loss into armor. In the last room he found Mira standing by a window holding a lantern. She turned to him and said, "The door you keep locked is not to keep others out, it's to keep yourself in." He woke up with tears. He didn't understand. Weeks passed before Mira knocked again. This time, Arav opened the door. Without hesitation she smiled, not surprised, not triumphant, just knowing, and for the first time Arev didn't feel invaded. He felt seen. Maybe that's what Jung meant by individuation, not becoming untouchable, but becoming whole enough to let another in the end.